Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Chelsea Perspective. And if you haven't been here before, welcome to Chelsea Perspective. Chelsea Perspective. Today, I am elated. I'm very happy to have two of my best friends in the Chelsea community and my brothers, Kozilla and also Matt from WordlWideChels pod. Guys, welcome to Chelsea Perspective.
Thank you for having me on once again. A pleasure to come back on. It's been a while, but happy to get back on.
Kozilla, welcome to Chelsea Perspective. I know this is your first time here, and I'm glad that you found time to join us for this interesting topic.
Thank you very much, man. I appreciate it. It's always a pleasure. I've been tuning into this channel quite a lot recently. And yeah, man, it's going to the top, man.
Yeah, okay. Let's get into it straight up. And I know you guys are also excited about the topic. So let's start. Let me start with you, Matt, Cods, so to speak. So how would you define a Chelsea legend? Who would you say is a Chelsea legend?
Being a Chelsea legend it's a bloodline, especially when you're not talking about the main Chelsea legends. I feel like when you are a Chelsea legend, your legacy is written in folklore and whatnot. And I feel like all of our legends right now have made a certain impact that other people haven't. So at the moment, I'd say John Terry, obviously, Frank Lampard's a legend, Franco Zola, and if you want to go even back, Peter Osgood and all of the other guys back then who are in more recent time, I'd say Eden Hazard, N'Golo Kante, and from there, I think those are like the solidified names, and then from there there's a gray area, and then there's other guys that people might think is a legend, and then other people might not think is a legend. But I feel like the names that I've just mentioned are just certified legends within our fan base, and their legacy is going to be with our club for the rest of however long our club ceases to survive.
So when you say legacy cards, what do you mean legacy? Because legacy could be anything.
So I feel like when you're talking about legacy, you have to talk about longevity. Longevity is one of the biggest is one of the biggest factors when you're deciding who and what player is a legend. So I feel like longevity is also in the question. That's the first thing you have to mention. The second you have to mention is the biggest moments you've given to the club. Third, what you've won. And then all of that combined just makes you a legend, especially at Chelsea.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for taking some time to bring in some clarity there. What you've won is a great point for me, and I like it that you did say that. Coming to you, Matt, how would you define a Chelsea legend, or let me say, who would you say is a Chelsea legend? Not mentioning individuals, just the definition for you.
Yeah, I think there's multiple categories and ways to become a legend. I mean, obviously, the one of the important things is you have a lot of success at the club, so you win a number of trophies and play a big part in a number of trophies over a period of time. But it's not just selected to that; otherwise, we wouldn't have any legends before the Roman era. So it's more, you could become a legend by just having a long career at Chelsea and playing a big impact, which may or may not get trophies, because sometimes we weren't even in the Division 1, and we've had players play for us that have had long careers, may not have won as much as other legends would have, but they've had a long career at Chelsea and have always been committed to the club. And again, like Kozilla said, develop this kind of legacy with the club and the fans. I think legends, the word legend and kind of the term world class kind of gets, I feel, thrown around a bit too easily nowadays. I feel in a club you shouldn't have that many legends. Yes, there'd be a lot of great players, and I kind of list people who are not quite there as cult heroes. So they're great. They've got great parts of the fan base that love them, and them parts of the fan base probably would class them as legends themselves. But they're just not that quite creme de la creme. I think the legend to be in a legend status, you've got to be at the top of your game and giving so much for the club in terms of making an impact. But it is a massive grey area, and it's very subjective to who actually picks who's a legend and who's not. There's no written book to say what is a legend and what's not.
Yeah, I mean, again, it comes down to who you ask and the player you're talking, the player in question, because you did mention something, longevity, and Kaz also mentioned something important, achievements. So now let's just move into taking some comments from the chart, because there are some interesting comments there. Because when I put out a tweet about this show, I did say something about, I asked the question if you think John Mikel Obi is a Chelsea legend, and if you believe he is, come defend your stance. So he says there's nothing to defend. There's nothing to defend. Legends are instrumental in club success. Drogba, for example, a leader, scorer of many cup-winning goals. Terry, captain, leader, legend, highest scoring defender. That's clear. Those are obvious, right? But when you come to somebody like Mikel, you could say he didn't even score up to 4 goals, right? I think the most is 3. But he's if you look at his Chelsea career, he was instrumental to almost all the trophies that was won during his playing days at Chelsea. In the Champions League final, he was great. That is not me saying he's a legend. That is just me that is highlighting how he did for Chelsea, because he's that kind of a player on the pitch. He sacrifices his ability to even create chances. He sits back, let every other, like you could argue the most creative players in the team to go forward and do their thing. So why argue? And I do put, I think, a poll on Twitter. I just couldn't find it. About 50% or 40-something% said he's not a Chelsea legend. Some say he's not quite there. And only about 30% or so said he is a Chelsea legend. So why is that? Why isn't Mikel a legend? If I should let me start with you, Kaz.
For me, John Obi Mikel is a legend to the club. For me, he has to be a legend to the club because first, as I said, the longevity he had at this football club. He joined us in 2006 and he left in 2017. So that's solid years of service, which he give us. But I think the problem with Mikel, and the reason why a lot of people don't see him in the same regard as a Lampard or a Kante or even a Makelele, is because the peak of these other guys that played for our club could be higher than Mikel. Because at a time where football was back then, I feel like football has come a long way, as in we give a lot more recognition and a lot more understanding to the way the game is played. And I feel like a player like Mikel wouldn't be as appreciated back then as he would be now. So I feel like it's the same way in Jorginho. So I feel like with Jorginho, a lot of people don't see his use in the team. And especially if Jorginho was playing in Mikel's time, a lot of people would not see the use of Jorginho in the team. But I feel like the use of stats and analytics and football systems and just literally like the understanding in the game has gone on so much from back then to now. I feel like Mikel is a lot more appreciated than he is now than he was back then. So I feel like, as I said, with Mikel, I feel like a lot of the work that he done went unnoticed. Actually, he was quite pivotal in the Champions League final, our biggest trophy. He won a lot for the club. He was very reliable, and I feel like because of the years he gave us and the trophies that he did win, I feel like for me personally, he is a legend. But I feel like due to the era he did play in, a lot of people overlooked him because of the style of footballer he was. And also I feel like some of the other midfielders that we did have came to us at a higher peak. So they came to our club at a higher ability, but Mikel was just that old reliable guy who just, you know what he was getting. It's sort of like an Aspie today. You knew what you were getting with Mikel. Solid defensively, just kept the game ticking in a sense. So I feel like for me, Mikel was a legend personally for me, but it's all up to your own viewpoint.
Yeah, I'd have to agree that it depends on who you ask. That's why Matt rightly said it is subjective. So Matt, coming back to you, do you think John Obi Mikel is a Chelsea legend? And also, I'd have you look at the comment on the screen again. Mikel not a legend, and I watched CFC for 50 years. Would anybody seriously pick him ahead of Makelele, Kante, Essien, Ballack, Thomas, Kovacic, Jorginho, Hollins, list endless, never influenced in big games. That is his opinion. And to me, I would say it doesn't, this is not a case of picking somebody over the other person. It's a case of adding somebody to a list, what we call legends. And to me, it doesn't matter it's not a case of picking somebody over the other person. So Matt's over to you. What do you think? Do you think Mikel is a Chelsea legend, or do you think otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, I think John Obi Mikel has been one of the most criminally underrated players in Chelsea history. I remember back in the day when Mikel was here, you'd never hear anyone speak of his name. And if they did, most of the time it was in a negative way. But he was such a vital player. And not in the aspect of scoring, because if it was up to scoring, then only your strikers and your attacking midfielders and your wingers would be classed as legends, and then the occasional high-scoring defender. You've got to look at football as the game. And the position that Mikel played, it was one of them positions where he made everyone else look better because of the role he did. It's a bit like how Kante
sacrificing his own ability. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't the most technically of gifted players. We can all admit that. But the role he did in terms of that kind of destroyer, but he would allow everyone else to play around him, the Essiens, the Lampards, the Ballacks, etc. He'd allow them to play and do their thing and comfortably just clear up for all of them too. I think I personally wouldn't put Mikel as a legend, just because I just don't think he has done exactly enough. But he's in that typical, what I call, cult hero. He's a fantastic player who, again, certain parts of the fan base, such as Kozilla, would rightly say he's a legend. And I can understand your points when you say it. But for me, legend is the highest caliber. I think he just misses out. It's not by far much. And again, to say the goals, not every player is a goal scorer. So that when you look at stats is only half what you should be looking at. It's the eye test as well. It's watching him, and if you watch it back, if we had in the Lampard era, if we had a John Obi Mikel in the Lampard era, we would have done so much better than what we are, because we needed that defensive midfield that destroyed it. It's like Matic in a way. Matic was a similar type player. How he would do all the dirty work, and then everyone else up front and in the midfield could be their technical self and have that fluidity to do that without having to worry about defence so much, because Mikel has got you covered. So I think there needs to be a lot more respect on John Obi Mikel's name. I wouldn't put quite him as a legend but certainly a cult hero in my respect.
Yeah, honestly, but I'm not sure why you'd consider calling him a cult hero, and you'd consider that Mikel alone would have made a great difference in Frank Lampard's team, and still you're not sure. For you, he's not quite a legend yet. But again, we're all entitled to our opinions, and like I said, I'm not making the argument to say he's a legend or not. I'm just analyzing what you just said. To me, you literally call him a legend without calling him a legend, because if it's that important, if it's that good enough that he would have made a great difference in Frank Lampard's team, then to me you're practically saying he's a legend. But that's, by the way, and I quite understand your argument, and I want to know, the people in the chat, you haven't missed the giveaway. And even though we say 30 people, no matter the number of people we have, in around 45 minutes mark, we will do the live giveaway. And if you're in the UK or United States, you get an authentic Chelsea polo shirt. Outside of those two countries, you get the cash equivalent, and the panel also can participate. I also have the link in the chart, so if you want to join, feel free to do so and voice your opinion. So let's come back again now. Before we bring it back to Mikel, let me just ask you a simple yes or no question, Matt. Would you say, since when we were defining who's a legend, we say something about achievement, right? Would you say that Kai Havertz is already a legend?
No.
Okay, good. Would you say that Michael Essien is already is a legend?
Again, for me, he goes in that cult hero bracket. I'm very. You have to be creme de la creme at the top of the table to be. In terms of legends, I've only got a pick of about 10, 12 people in the whole of the Chelsea span. So I'm very picky.
Really? How many you said?
About 12, if I can think off the top of my head. Maybe a couple more, but not many.
Oh, okay. I'm coming back to you, Cos. Would you say that Kai Havertz is already a Chelsea legend?
For me, he's not a Chelsea legend at the moment. It's way too young in his career. Obviously, he's gonna be immortalized once his career is done with Chelsea because of that one goal. But I do feel like he's not a legend at the moment.
But can you believe that when I put out, some people about more people will rate him, will argue that he's a legend over Mikel?
For me, that's ludicrous.
Yeah, exactly. That's surprising to me too.
Yeah. It's like he hasn't done enough in his career. Yes, he scored one goal, but my point would be anyone can score one goal in one moment. So the argument is he hasn't had that longevity. And I'd argue even in the 2 years that he's been here, if you take out that Champions League goal, which yes, that's a very big thing, he hasn't exactly been at the high standard you would class as a legend. So maybe in 5 to 6 years, if he has a brilliant set of seasons, if he goes on, we win the Premier League, we win the Champions League again, or we win other trophies, then maybe you could argue that a bit more. But he just hasn't had simply that longevity to be called a legend yet.
How about Michael Essien, Cos? Would you say Michael Essien is a Chelsea legend?
Yeah, for me, Michael Essien is definitely a legend. Michael Essien's won a lot of trophies for us. He's been, in the same way, he was slightly disrespected, not to the same extent as John Mikel, but I feel like Essien, he's got a lot of moments for us. I remember that Barcelona goal. I remember watching that live when Essien scored against Barcelona when I was a kid. But I feel like Essien, for me, he was a pivotal player for us. He filled in at a lot of different positions. He could play a DM. He could play as an 8. He played as right back. He contributed a lot to the team, and he was just part of that rugged, tough, hard to break down Chelsea DNA that we carried for a long time, and we're seeing shades of that in this modern age under Thomas Tuchel. So I feel like Michael Essien for me is definitely a legend, and he gave us a lot of solid years, and he did win a lot, and he was quite selfless in his approach to playing the game for us.
Yeah, Coach, you just highlighted a very, very great point there. He was selfless. Just like Mikel, he was selfless. They sacrificed their ability to go forward and do even more for the team. They sit back, protect the defense, while the way they used to put it then, the more creative players, which makes it seem as if made it seem because he was then that Michael Essien and Mikel are not as creative as those guys. But I mean, it's ludicrous, like you said. Okay, now let's come to a more controversial figure right now. We'll still come back to Essien and John Obi Mikel if we have somebody else in the panel. If we see any other comment in the chat that feels otherwise. Now, how about David Louise? Cause do you think he's a Chelsea legend?
Very difficult. It was a very, very difficult question. I feel like I don't think he reaches that legend status for me. David Louise came in the club. I think it was it 2011, if I'm not mistaken. He came. So I feel like he did give us a lot of solid years. He did win the Champions League with us, but I feel like there was a lot more negative I could remember with David Louise than positive. I remember when he did go to PSG against. He did go to PSG and he left us, and then he came back and he scored against us and he started celebrating. I remember that in particular. But that being said, Devin Louise was a very, very good player for us. I feel like he was one of the best ball-playing centre-backs I've seen in my lifetime, personally. I remember he came back to us and he won the league with Conte. He was key in that system. But I do feel like David Luiz might be a cult hero. But I don't feel like he reaches that legend status just for me.
I get your point. You're highlighting his behavior towards the club when he left and how he left. But we'll come back to that. Matt, coming to you, do you think David Luiz is a Chelsea legend?
Yeah, I'd agree with Kozilla. I don't think he's a Chelsea legend, and even in terms of a cult hero basis, he's on the lower end of that for me. I think, really, I mean, he didn't just leave once; he left twice, in fashions that were a bit more surprising. It wasn't like it was we expected it to happen. I mean, the second one, he just left on deadline day. No one expected him to leave. And I think he's a great character and he's a great personality in the club. But again, I don't. Apart from that, again, he was involved in the Champions League. But I'll argue, other than that, I don't think he's contributed enough again to be in that legend bracket. And then that if you're leaving like the way he was celebrating against us, it just kind of puts that down and more in terms of that cult hero basis.
So you're saying David Luiz isn't a Chelsea legend because of his behavior towards the club when he left and how he left. Did I get that clear?
I just don't. Yeah, that, and I just don't think he's won enough. I don't think he's done enough either.
So we are agreeing that somebody's behavior, no matter what they've achieved at the club, can affect their status at the club, because you could argue he's won 2 Premier League titles with Chelsea, right? Isn't it 2? The Champions League and also the Europa Cup. And if you plus all the years that he spent at Chelsea, I think he's stayed long enough. So I think even without knowing it, I think we're just judging him, we're just putting him off that list because of his behavior towards the club. So we can all agree that someone's behavior can affect their status at the club. Are you with me, Cause? Is that what the case is, Cause? You can always come in to voice your opinion.
Yes, 100%. And I feel like the way he departed as well, the way he left to go to Arsenal as well, you can't, if you're a Chelsea legend, it's a slap in the face to not only the fans but maybe some of your teammates as well who have been long serving as well. So I feel like you can never leave Chelsea to go to a rival, and it's different when it's a player, because I don't want to get into the topic of managers, but a lot of people will see that Jose Mourinho is not a legend because he did go to Tottenham. So I don't necessarily agree with that point, but I feel like with David Luiz in particular, he didn't hold that much of a weight as a legend for me. Like he wasn't really a Terry, he wasn't really a Lampard, he wasn't really a Drogba. And if you do that and you're not really one of those players, there's not really much going back for you if you do go to a team like Arsenal. So for me, he's not a legend.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and I have to agree that a person's behavior can ruin their legacy. Even it is the same in the workplace and every institution, not just in football. That is a simple behavior. A bad behavior can ruin somebody's legacy. And for that of David Luiz, the way he's left and the way he celebrated after scoring against Chelsea, I think he doesn't deserve a legendary status at Chelsea, but that's not up to me. Again, it depends on who you ask. Some people will argue otherwise. And like you argue, cause he isn't really that, you cannot say there's a moment in his Chelsea career that he was in form all through. There's always one mistake or the other. But again, it's a gray area, like Cots did put it. It's not easy to decide who is and who isn't. Now, let me go back a little bit. Maybe that will help us tackle the next segment of the show. Now, I'll start with you, Cause. Do you think Zola is a Chelsea legend? If you say yes, why?
Yeah, 100%. Obviously, Francozzola was before my time, but I could only remember what my dad used to say about him when he used to see him play. So I feel like Francozola came to Chelsea at a time where we weren't really the most successful club. think we were going through much of a rebuild. I can't remember what manager he came to the club from, but I do remember the overall arching ethos in the club. Like we were going through much of a rebuild. There was a lot of foreign imports to the club. I feel like Hullet and Gianluca Vialli did change this, and I feel like when Zola did come, it was like a breath of fresh air for Chelsea fans, because no one really saw what type of player he was. It was really foreign to the league. Is the way he used to take people on was just really ridiculous at the time, and obviously he didn't give us a lot of years like maybe like a John Terry or a Lampard or even the Mikel gave us. But I feel like when he was here, he was just a very, very, very special magic player. So yeah, I feel like even though Zola did come to us at the later stages of his career, he was just a magnificent player. So yeah.
And it just sounds, cause I have to be honest with you, it just sounds as if you're classifying Zola as a Chelsea legend, given, I mean, the entertainment he brought to the Chelsea fans. It wasn't like in terms of his achievement. Did he achieve that much for Chelsea?
He didn't achieve as much as other legends did do, but I feel like he was literally a product of his environment, I believe, because at the time Chelsea wasn't really a powerhouse. This was pre-Roman era. I feel like we did win. We won the Cup Winners' Cup against Real Madrid, and Zola was involved in that. But I feel like because we weren't such a successful club at the time, we had like only a couple players to believe in to dig us out the mud per se. So I feel like Francozzola was one of them, and it was unfortunate he didn't come to the club during the Roman era, and he came to the club as he was a bit older in his career. But I feel like it's not really his fault, and he gave us what he could, and he was one of the best players we've ever seen for the club. So yeah, 100% he's a legend.
Me and Koch, you always find the words and the way to explain it and make me think otherwise. But that one for me is but on the fence for me. I'm not sure if we're talking about longevity plus achievement, and I'd argue that Zola isn't really there for me. I know somebody else may argue otherwise. Coming to you, Matt, do you think Zola he's a Chelsea legend? If you think so, tell me why. I know you said you're very picky.
Yeah, I'm very picky, but Zola is not one where I'm picky. I think he's one. I'm not going to hide it. He is one of my favorite players that's ever played for a club. So So
you're being biased.
I may be a tad, but I can back up. So in terms of Chelsea, what we got to think of Chelsea in the 90s. Chelsea in the 90s was not a very successful team. We were in the 80s. We struggled a lot in multiple factors in football, and the reason why I think Zola is a legend is because he took a team that was not really winning anything and was very much on a rebuild phase, and he's brought Chelsea from one very small level all the way up to what was just before the Roman era, a Champions League qualifying side. I mean, in terms of trophies that he won 2 FA Cups, a League Cup, Cup Winners' Cup, Super Cup, and a Charity Shield. So he has won a fair bit of trophies, especially for that period of time. Obviously, when we look at it compared to the Roman era, of course, the honours are not going to look as good, because obviously we had a much better team, we've got a much better structure in the club. But when you compare it to that time, that was a very successful part of the club's history in terms of trophies. And I think sometimes it is about style, and the style, the way Zola would drag us through some games, and he was one of the key players of that side that went on to win cup competitions, went on to do well in Europe. So it's not just it's kind of he has had quite a lot. I mean, 7-8 years, that is quite a long time at Chelsea. It was one of his longest clubs that he's been at, and I think he just brought that club to the next level. And that's something. When I mean trophies is not everything, but he made that impact to the club, but changed the club's history completely. Because say Chelsea didn't do well with the likes of Zola, with the likes of Dennis Wise, etc., Vialli. Who says Roman would have bought us in the first place? So my point is, Zola took us to a level that 5-6 years before that, Chelsea fans probably weren't expecting us to be. So I think that they started what is they started the legacy that what's happening now, and I think them group of players get a lot of respect, and that's why where Zola's at the top of that bracket, he's one of my favourite players and is one of my legends of the club, certified. But I can understand where people will disagree.
Yeah, I was thinking, because you said you were picky. I was thinking maybe you'd argue otherwise, but you've made some great points on why you think he's a legend. So I'm going to bring us back to something that Kaz said. Kaz said when he was mentioning a few players he think has achieved a legendary status at Chelsea, he mentioned N'Golo Kante. He mentioned, Kaz, please, if I quote you wrong, please let me know. He mentioned N'Golo Kante. He mentioned Eden Hazard. I've forgotten other players, but let's bring it to Eden Hazard. Matt, would you argue that he's a Chelsea legend, and why?
Yes, he does get into that legend category for me. He's what I'd class as one of the lower end of the legends, because he did win a lot of trophies with us, and again, he was one of the players that in multiple seasons he carried the club through and single-handedly got us trophies, whether it was the Europa League, whether it was the Premier League in Jose Mourinho's era, even in other areas. He was a player that we built the team around, and he carried us through into so many trophies, because that was an era where we were very unstable. That was the Mourinho era, where that 15-16 season. That would be the only argument why I'd say people might not say, because Hazard kind of went missing in that season. But even then, we had the instability of the Conte years, and even under Sarri, it was very unstable. The club structure was not exactly running how it should. But Hazard worked so hard tooth and nail to work with the club and get as much trophies as he can. And what I like as well, he could have left this club 2 or 3 years before he did. But he chose to stay each summer. Real Madrid came in and gave him offers. And bearing in mind, Real Madrid was his dream club. And he mentioned that before he even came, that Real Madrid was his dream club. But yet he stayed at Chelsea for an extended period of time to try and win as much as he could before moving on. And maybe people would argue he picked his moment. But again, sometimes it's not about if you leave, it's about the way you leave. And the way he left is he contributed to a team that was in his building phases under Sarri. We were heading towards a transfer ban, but what he took us to third place in the league, which was not expected at the time, and drove us through to get the Europa League, which was a big moment in that period.
I get your point, Matt. Let me ask you this question: Was the transfer ban in place before he left?
No. But the thing is, it's whether
I think we've had cards. Can you please help me out here? Wasn't the transfer ban in place before Eden Hazard left?
I think it came to fruition after, but I feel like there was talk about having a transfer ban before he left. Yeah, so I think everyone knew that we were going to have a transfer ban after the season.
Thank you, Cards. So my argument is, you could argue that he left us when we needed him the most. If you're talking about how he left. Although, and you could also argue that had he not left us then, he would have run down his contract and leave because he really wanted to go to Madrid. So there's some, you could say, caveats or some gray areas, let me use Kot's term, in terms of Eden Hazard, because it seemed as if we even begged him that we're going to give him the captainship, and there are some stories, I'm not sure how truthful that is then. But the question is, I mean, it just seemed as if we're adding him into the category of Chelsea legend because of how good he was to watch, how he's carried us in some games. If that's the case, understandably. But if we're talking about how he left Chelsea there are some gray areas. He really wanted to leave, that he was very open about it, although he was respectful to some measure because other people left on a bad note. So go ahead, Matt. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I mean, my argument about that would be, when was the deal agreed? Because as far as we know, remembering back to that, there was months and months and months where we were discussing, is he going, is he not? And I think he said about 6 to 7 months before he was announced that he was leaving, that he had made his decision. So I reckon this was a thing that the summer before, it was agreed by both the club and the player that he would be let go should Madrid put in a correct offer, which obviously they end up putting 150 million, which is something Chelsea wouldn't refuse. So I think it was the ban talk, and when I say the ban talk, the seriousness of it actually happened came well after the deal was probably agreed. I think the deal was agreed and he'd go through that season. And that's why I think some players, when they know they're going to go to another club, they could just down tools and just play half-heart because they know they're going to go to another club anyway. But he fought too now. He could have got a 12-month, he could have got an injury, a really bad injury, and we would never have played for Real Madrid. But he fought tooth and nail to get one more trophy and get that Europa League. Again, another European trophy against one of our arch rivals, Arsenal, and leave on a high note. So I think he always had Chelsea at heart, and even now, I do think he probably regrets the Real Madrid move because obviously it hasn't worked out. But
yeah, for obvious reasons, yeah.
But I think Chelsea is in his heart. Chelsea is his number one club at the moment, and I think again it's the fact that he single-handedly brought us through to multiple trophies, him by himself, and he took this club, which, let's be honest, we brought in his time, we brought players in like Bakayoko, Ross Barkley, who haven't hit anywhere near the standards of what Chelsea fans would regard Chelsea in. So even with them players, he fought through and pushed us through to get title after title, whether it was the FA Cup, whether it was the Europa League, whether it was the Premier League. So, and in each one of them trophies, he was incredibly vital. He was either our top goal scorer in it or our top contributor in it. He was so vital and created a legacy in that kind of Roman part. You had the Roman part one, which was the old guard of Lampard, Terry, Cech, Drogba, Ashley Cole, etc. But that's part two, that phase two of Roman. He was the one that really carried us through that. And you'd argue the club didn't back him in terms of giving the players around him to go and really challenge for that Champions League, etc. We were in a area where we were very unstable. But yet Hazard really pushed us through and kept us into that level just enough for us to come into that now, what we call phase three of Lampard era and now Tuchel. So I think that transition that he gave, and it's similar to like Zola, he took us and kept us to a level that was needed for the beneficial of the club. So that's why I think, again, Hazard is in that legend status.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great shout. I'm going to come back to you, because you were the person that listed him as a Chelsea legend. And I know you've heard my argument on how he was openly, clamoring for the move to Madrid, and how also I believe he could have run down his contract and leave on a free had he not left when he did. What do you think? And also the argument that he left us when we needed him the most, because if I recall, I still think that there's a sign, or maybe when we knew that the transfer ban was coming, we needed him the most. Then I think even Sarri did say something about that. Well, what do you think?
For me, yeah, as I said, I feel like Lampard is. I'm sorry, not Lampard. Eden Hazard is a tier one legend for me. Yeah, he's up there with the greats. He's up there with Lampard, Terry, Drogba for me. So yeah, as I said, I feel like he is a very big legend. If you want to go back to the start of his Chelsea tenure, he did come, as Matt said, during the Roman phase part two. So yeah, we had the later years of Drogba, Lampard, Terry, and that core. Roman's first tenure, and then we had the rebuild with Oscar, Willian, Mata, Hazard, and then Hazard came into that. So I feel like what you have to consider with Eden Hazard is that he carried us, and he carried us heavy when we needed that main star player, and he didn't have the luxuries of having an Essien, a Lampard, a Ballack, um, an Obi Mikel in the team, or anyone like that. He played with us, and he was just that main focal point that you needed. He was just our star player at the time. And he did give us his prime years. That's what I want to say first and foremost, because I feel like as an attacker, your younger years have to be understood as your prime years because you're more active, you're more agile. Your understanding in the game might not be as good as it is during your later years, but I feel like when you are a younger player, you have a lot more to give. So I feel like he did give us his prime years, and the way he did leave for Madrid, I feel like was gracious for me at the end of the day because he did win us a trophy, and he left as a legend because he scored 2 goals for us that night, and he left as Drogba did, not in the same extent, but slightly as Drogba did. And I feel like the point you did make as the point you made as saying Hazard did leave us when we needed him the most. I think the club is to blame because the club knew that we were going to a transfer ban, and the seasons before that, he was playing in the same teams as guys of the same ilk as Danny Drinkwater, Davide Sappacosta, Victor Moses, and all of these guys. So I feel like the club should have equipped him better with a better team, in my opinion. So I feel like the club is to blame for giving Eden Hazard some not necessarily bad players, but not ideal players for a world-class player to stay in the team. And I feel like when he did, when he was playing for us, I feel like his best season was under Sarri, 100%. But I do feel like there was equally as good seasons when he played for Jose Mourinho's first year was good. Under Conte, that first season was good as well. So yeah, I feel like Hazard was at the pinnacle for me. And the thing is, we have to understand some players when they play for us, they can be seen as legends. Oh, sorry, 1 second. They can be seen as legends because of how good they are on the world scale. So I feel like coming off that 2018 World Cup, I feel like Eden Hazard for me was a top 4, top 3 player in the world. Based off the year that he had and based off the World Cup that he did give. So at the end of the day, if you're a player of that ilk, being top 3, top 4 playing for Chelsea at the time, you have to be seen as a legend, hands down. So just to conclude, I would say he is definitely a legend, and surely because of his longevity, obviously, what he won, and he gave us the best years of his career playing under unideal circumstances, and he did achieve, in my opinion, being one of the best players in the world, playing for our football club.
Yeah, that's a great shout right there. And again, I think you both are correct. That brings me to his comments that I think white will look good on him, but if he stays blue, equally will look good on him. I think it wasn't like that's the end of the world for him. I think if you listen to his comments, then he was willing to stay if the 2 clubs doesn't sort out the situation, the contract situation, or the transfer fee. But again, yeah, he is a Chelsea legend. I'd have to agree. But before we continue, I'd like to know people in the chat. In a few minutes, we'll be doing the live giveaway, and to participate, just do hashtag Chelsea Perspective, all small letters, and in the chat, and the panel can also participate. Just type. Let me show the example here so that when I run the software, it picks you up as a participant. It's just hashtag, you do Chelsea Perspective, be part of it. Okay, that's it. As you see there, hashtag Chelsea Perspective. That's what you need to type in the chart to be part of the giveaway draw. Live here, you will see everything, and then the software will help us pick a winner. And again, please, if you're watching and you haven't subscribed to the channel, please subscribe to the channel and smash that like button. Click on the bell notification button so that you will be notified whenever we're live or whenever I upload a new video. And again, we'll be doing giveaways once every month. So to participate, and you can also tell others about it, to participate, you have to do whatever you're told to do in the chat to be part of it. So now let's come back to a player who's also underrated, his work rate, his performances during games and how quick he is, his ability on the ball overall. I'm talking about Ramirez. Cause do you think Ramirez is a Chelsea legend? If you say yes, can you tell us why?
Ramirez, for me, he was a good player. He was a good servant to the club, but I don't think he is a legend per se. I don't think he gave us the required years at top level or the amount of longevity that other players did give us. He did win a few trophies for us. He was very instrumental in Chelsea winning the Champions League in 2012, but I feel like Ramirez should have stayed a bit longer, and if he did, I feel like he would be seen as a legend. But for me, Ramirez just misses out. I feel like he was slightly maybe a cult hero, but I feel like Ramirez was a very, very good player for us, and he was very underrated. But I feel like he just misses out on being a legend.
And it doesn't matter his that beautiful, delicious goal against Barcelona that made sure we made it to the final. How about you, Matt? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think he's again, this is one of my favourite players. So normally, in terms of bias, you'd usually say that I would think he's a club legend, but I do put him in that cult hero bracket just because he has a couple. He's like kind of like the Havertz thing. He had a couple of good goals, but it just wasn't. There wasn't enough longevity, and in that time, apart from that goal, he was a great player. And again, I think he was very underrated to some fans, but he just wasn't that legend status, that upper tier that you could put him into that area. I don't think he did enough in terms of impact, apart from the occasional good goal that he did score, to really class himself as a legend. But again, cult heroes, very good with the fans, was a very sympathetic player, and he did have a good role. He wasn't always in the side. Sometimes, depending on what manager it was, he was kind of brought in and brought out the side, and then eventually he moved on to China, which is obviously two to their own. Football's a short career. You've got to seal the money for your family, and he did seal his family's fortunes for life. So obviously that's up to him, and he didn't leave in a bad way at all, but he just hasn't stayed long enough for me, and even in a short period of time he hasn't done enough to be a legend for me.
Okay, let me say something. It just seemed as if flair is one of the criteria with which we judge who's a legend or not. How flamboyant that player was or is on the pitch whenever he plays, and how many goals he scored. Even without knowing it, it just seemed as if we're judging players by these factors. What do you think, Cos?
Sorry, do you mind repeating the question?
I'm saying it just seemed as if unknowingly we're deciding who's a legend and who's not based on flair, or how flamboyant the player is, or how their dribble skills, or how they wow the fans. And even without knowing it, I think we're somehow deciding who's a legend and who's not just by those factors.
Maybe you could make the case for that particular point in the case of Zola, maybe, because I feel like if you're talking about flair and how you wow the fans, I feel like Zola and Hazard for me are one of the best players to ever do that. But I feel like in the case of them two, I feel like it's very similar, as they were basically the linchpin of the club when we were struggling, in a sense. So I feel like it's very different, and obviously flicks and tricks and whatnot is all good in the grand scheme of the game, especially if you win. But at the end of the day, things like that are not going to get you anywhere unless you win a title, or if you score. So I don't know, man. I feel like it just makes it maybe to some people they might class a legend is the way they class a legend might be how entertaining they are, but for me that's not the case. As I said before, obviously you have to take into consideration longevity, you have to take into consideration what they've won, and yeah, those are basically the main two, but there's caveats as well in the case of Zola, even though he did win a lot for the club during this time, but I don't think tricks and flair comes into this.
Well, great argument there and well explained. What do you think, Matt? Do you think we're doing that unknowingly?
See, I think it's a factor. Like with Zola, obviously that was a factor that his playing style was very attractive, but at the same time, that's not just why we were judging Zola as a club legend, because of the impact he made from bringing Chelsea as a club that wasn't doing very well to a club that was doing very well. But whereas you look at Ramirez, yes, he had a very good playing style, but he didn't really, apart from that one Champions League goal and a couple of other good goals that he scored, there wasn't that big an impact. He didn't have that big an impact to the team. In the Champions League run, there were other bigger players such as Drogba, Lampard, Terry, Petr, etc. And then even in later years of his career at Chelsea, players like Eden Hazard were taken. So it was never really a time where Ramirez really took the reins and gave himself that legend category. So I think it's a bit harsh, and I always find it's a bit harsh to talk about who's a Chelsea legend and who's not, because these players that we're talking about are all fantastic players in our eyes. But it's just one of them things that it's quite hard to pick. You got to be a bit ruthless at times.
Yeah, that's a serious one. I mean, it's not easy because we're humans. It's easy for us to make some subconscious decisions based on subconsciously make decisions even without knowing it, attaching some factors that are not objective. So, but that's by the way. So now let's do the draw before we continue. And I hope everybody in the chat, if you haven't, please do so. To enter for the draw, you just have to do hashtag Chelsea Perspective. So let's see who wins it for today. It's going to be a once in a month thing. I'm going to share that again. I just clicked out of it. Share screen. All right. It is this screen here. All right. Can we all see the screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. I'm just going to make it full screens. After that, we can come back to it. And I want the comment gone. 1 second, please. All right. There you go. Let me zoom it out a little bit more. Right, so start collecting comments. So we have 7 people that are participating. I'm going to say draw. Ankit, you're not going to win it again because you won the other one, so you're not part of it. And it is who? Okay,
yes,
I seriously did not want Matt to win this thing. All right, congratulations, Matt. You get an authentic Chelsea polo shirt, or you get the equivalent, which is around $50. And again, congratulations to you. I'm glad. I was only joking when I said I didn't want you to win it. So congratulations to you, Matt.
It's all right, guys. This wasn't planned. It wasn't rigged. Don't worry.
No, they know it wasn't planned. So maybe next time. I was actually hoping Kozilla will win it. For some reason, I don't know why. Mm-hmm. So yes, let's get back to it. Matt, let's talk about what's his name, Matic. I think you could say he's had 2 stints at Chelsea. He left and then he came back, right? Do you think even he's done enough to even be considered a Chelsea legend, or do you think he's not even close?
Yeah, again, and for me, I mean, other people may disagree, but for me, he's in that cult hero status. I think he done very well in his 2 spells. Won multiple trophies at the club. I do think going to Man United does taint a little bit. I think that would be the issue, but he was very influential in the title winning season in the Premier League. A lot of people look at Fabregas and say, "Oh, he was fantastic," but again, Fabregas wouldn't have been able to do the job that he did without Matic. But again, for me, he's in that cult hero category for me.
But how about you, Cos? What do you think?
Yeah, let me just start by saying the Man United was a very good player for us. But I don't think he is a Chelsea legend because he was only literally with the club for 3 years actively. I feel like he was he was a very good player, but as I said, he wasn't with us that long. When he came to the club, I think it was around 2010, 2011-ish. He came, but he didn't really play, so maybe played a couple games. But then he went straight out on loan. I remember him going to Vitesse, and then he went to Benfica, and then he came back to us, I think 2014, and then he started again at Chelsea. But I feel like his second stint was good, very good. He was one of our better players at the time, but he didn't stay with us as long as I would have liked. And obviously, how Matt mentioned how he went to Man United, it wasn't really the best way to transition your career as a Chelsea legend. So for me, I don't think he is a Chelsea legend.
Yeah, I think also crossing the line and signing for a rival, no matter who their coach was then. I think it was Jose Mourinho. I think that puts a dent on whatever achievement you've had at Chelsea. For me, I don't think he's a Chelsea legend either. And Cards and Matt, I can't thank you guys enough, and I hope for you guys to be available for the part 2 of the show. And I also have to hope to get more people in. Somebody like Max from Button Ballers, he was busy today, couldn't make it. And I hope to get him on so that he can help us define who is a Chelsea legend and who's not. And it's been a great conversation, great input from Kozilla, great input from Matt from WordlWideChels. So Matt, please, can you take some time plugging yourself, tell the viewers who you are, how they can reach you, and if you have anything coming out soon or coming on soon, let them know.
Yeah, so obviously in terms of my personal Twitter account, you can see it on the name below at MattJBall98. In terms of where you can find most of my content, for YouTube, you can find me on WordlWideChels with Sadiq, who's the main man. Generally, I've not been on there as much as I would like to with the new job, but we're always on there doing reviews, previews, other Chelsea news. I'm also I own WordlWideChels podcast, which you can find us at Twitter at WWC Pod Articles. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcast. There should be one coming out tomorrow, which is all based around Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and as you guys know, I do love Ruben Loftus-Cheek, so that is going to be me waxing lyrical for Ruben for about an hour with a couple of guests. And yeah, there's a couple more. We're going to be doing some new women's shows weekly to try and expand the podcast a little bit. So stick tuned for that. And then after the international break, it'll be back to usual Max previews, reviews. So hopefully you guys can tune in. I know there's a couple of people in the chat that already avid listeners. Dita, you're a great listener, so shout out to you. But yeah, you can find me on all that, so check it out.
Yeah, Cards, please, again, please don't forget to go check out WordlWideChels. It's one of the most, you could say, democratic streams around where you can express yourself freely, no gimmicks. I enjoy going there whenever I can. I also like to pick a fight there in terms of argument whenever I can. And also go try out WordlWideChels Sport. It's great to listen to, great guests, always. I urge you to go do so, and you will thank me later. Coming to you, Cos, my brother, can you please take some time, tell the viewers about you, your social media handle, and how they can reach you if they want to?
Let me just start off by saying thank you to Coachella, bro. Thank you for having me on the platform. Obviously, I enjoyed being on the platform, interacting with
More
the
thanks to
viewers.
you, brother.
And yeah, for me, my Twitter handle is Kozilla53. If you guys want to give me a follow there, and my Instagram is Kozilla with 2 A's. And hopefully, my plan is to start being a content creator before Christmas. So I've got my stuff coming through and all of that. I'm going to be on Twitch mostly, but yeah, that's the plan. So just follow my Twitter, watch this space, and we're gonna start very, very soon.
Thank you very much again, Kozilla and Matt, for being here. And mostly, thank you for everybody in the chat. Star, Blue Cloud, Stevie, Letness is greatness. So you're welcome, brother. Almighty Blues FC, Chichi, Eze, Just Viola, and Data, and some other people. If I forgot to mention your name, my apologies. I'm only a human being. And Data, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. If I'm not, my apologies to you, brother. I love you so much for always being available to support this channel. And again, thanks to everybody in the chat. You guys provide great value to the channel. And I hope to see you guys again next time. Cheers.